Thursday, July 30th, 2026. Picture a tropical runway at dawn. The air is thick with heat shimmer, palm trees line the perimeter, and the concrete stretches out totally empty and waiting. But this isn't just any runway. It's a stage for one of the most fascinating anomalies in modern geopolitical strategy. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to unpack a brilliant, high-stakes balancing act happening right in the heart of Southeast Asia. We're looking at a story of military diplomacy that honestly reads like a geopolitical thriller.
Okay, let's dive right in. It all starts with a completely unremarkable announcement. From a flat, institutional briefing room in Beijing, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of National Defense reads a short paragraph. Next month, he states, the Air Force of the People's Republic of China will fly to Thailand. They're going to train in joint air defense and disaster relief alongside the Royal Thai Air Force. The exercise is called Falcon Strike 2026. There's no named adversary here, no crisis, just a quiet, bureaucratic statement.
But here is the gripping contradiction that makes this so absolutely crucial for us to look at today. The country preparing to host those Chinese military assets on its runways is a treaty ally of the United States. In fact, Thailand has been a designated US Major Non-NATO Ally since 2003. And yet, this August, they are willfully opening their airspace to Chinese air defense crews. Both facts are public. Both are announced. So how exactly does a nation balance a treaty alliance with Washington while simultaneously hosting the Air Force of Beijing?
Section 1. The Void, or What Was Not Said. To understand this balancing act, we really have to look past the headlines and examine the deliberate vagueness of the announcement. In military diplomacy, what's missing from a press release is often just as important as what's actually in it.
Let's look at the loudly announced facts first. The confirmed details are pretty broad. The host country is Thailand, and it's set for August 2026. China is sending, quote, multiple types of aircraft and ground-based air defense forces. They'll practice joint air defense alongside humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. And Beijing officially notes this as the 9th iteration of this series. That's what we know for sure.
Now, I want you to focus on the void. Look at what was not announced. The aircraft type? Not specified. The specific air base? Not specified. The exact dates in August? Again, not specified. In a military exercise where the entire strategic significance rests on which specific machines are flying against which machines, the absence of a type list is vital information. It tells us that both governments are purposely choosing a really soft register. They want this visible in outline but vague in detail to avoid any unnecessary provocation.
Moving to Section 2, the rhythm, 9 iterations of a habit. This brilliantly illustrates that this isn't some sudden, chaotic pivot. To really grasp what Thailand is doing here, we have to look at the rhythm of their strategy.
Let's map out the timeline. Falcon Strike is definitely not new. It began way back in 2015 at Korat Royal Thai Air Force Base. It paused, came back, and since 2022, it's basically become an annual fixture, spending 4 straight years at a base in Udon Thani province. The point I want to emphasize here is the habit. This is the 9th iteration. Sure, any single exercise could be dismissed as a mere gesture, but a decade of repetition? That builds procedures, shared radio discipline, and real personal relationships between officers. That accumulated routine is the actual story here. Section 3. The counterweight, or the other exercise. If you're thinking this means Thailand is simply defecting to Beijing's sphere of influence, you are missing half the calendar. Let's see how this builds a much more complex picture by looking at the massive American-led counterweight.
Just 5 months before this Chinese exercise, Thailand co-hosted Cobra Gold with the United States. Look at this staggering juxtaposition. Over on the left, we've got Cobra Gold 2026. It's its 45th year, featuring 8,000 personnel and 30 participating nations. It is literally one of the largest multilateral military exercises in the world. And fascinatingly, China actually joined selected humanitarian portions of Cobra Gold. Now on the right, you have Falcon Strike, a bilateral 9th iteration exercise. In the space of just 6 months, Thailand seamlessly hosted both.
Underneath this incredible balancing act is a deeply entrenched U.S. alliance architecture. We're talking the 1954 Manila Pact, the 1962 Thanet-Russ Communique, the 2002 National Guard Partnership, and of course, the 2003 Major Non-NATO Ally designation. None of these foundational, decades-old treaties have been suspended or renounced. They remain completely intact, just quietly sitting alongside the Chinese Falcon Strike exercises.
Which brings us to Section 4, the transaction, what both sides buy. So, if the U.S. treaties are perfectly intact, Why do this at all? What is the calculated ledger of benefits here? Let's dive right into exactly what Beijing and Bangkok are extracting from this arrangement.
The absolutely crucial point here is the transaction itself. Look at Beijing's side first. Chinese state media openly admits Thailand is valuable because they fly Western-origin aircraft like American F-16s and Swedish Gripens, and they use Western-modeled tactics. China gets incredibly rare training against a force that thinks and flies like the West. Plus, they get the political normalization of landing combat aircraft on a U.S. ally's soil under the guise of disaster relief. On the flip side, Bangkok gets high-end dissimilar air combat training, a really close-up look at Chinese doctrine, and most importantly, geopolitical optionality, pure leverage.
Section 5. Two readings, drift versus routine. Now, you might be wondering, how does the intelligence community view all of this? Well, the fascinating thing is that this exact same set of facts supports two completely different, very serious analytical readings. We can read this as drift, or we can read it as routine. The drift argument points out a slow, steady realignment. For example, Chinese arms sales to Thailand were roughly double U.S. sales between 2016 and 2022. Washington declined Thailand's request for F-35s in 2023, and Thailand is actually buying its first submarine from China. But the routine argument counters this perfectly. They point out that Cobra Gold remains massively larger, the treaty framework is totally unbroken, and Thailand's newest fighters, they're actually Swedish, not Chinese. In this reading, this isn't a defection at all. It's just highly competent, non-aligned military diplomacy.
Section 6. The friction, or where the hedge ends. As we know, every hedge eventually hits an edge. A strategy this delicate doesn't exist in a vacuum, and it inevitably generates friction out in the real world.
Over 100, this number represents a pretty grim reality limit to the strategy. It's the number of lives lost in the 2025 Thai-Cambodian border conflict. Now, Thailand fought that border war using their American and Swedish jets. Meanwhile, Cambodia is China's closest regional defense partner. So while Beijing was exercising with Thailand, it was also exercising with Cambodia. Hedging buys you options, sure, but as this conflict made starkly visible, it doesn't buy a patron who will exclusively take your side when the shooting actually starts.
And this friction extends right into hardware and economics too. Remember that Chinese submarine Thailand ordered? Well, it stalled for years because a European embargo blocked the German engine it needed, delaying the whole thing to 2028. About their next batch of fighters, they actually pivoted away from both Washington and Beijing, dropping 19.5 billion baht on Swedish Gripen jets. Economically, the Thai Prime Minister has to spend his time simultaneously courting Chinese investment while managing the fallout from new American tariffs. Both relationships are deeply transactional and both have to be managed constantly.
Which brings us to the core takeaway of Thailand's entire grand strategy. You extract security goods from both great powers, but you concede exclusivity to neither. Keep the second door open at all times. Why? Because the leverage you hold in negotiations with Washington or Beijing exists purely in the fact that you actually have a second door, not necessarily in what lies behind it.
The entire region is watching Thailand to see how well this works, and honestly, they're watching just as closely for the moment it stops working. So I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. When a treaty ally successfully trains with both great global powers, is that a masterful hedge that ultimately strengthens them? Or is it a high-stakes bet that will eventually come due? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the consensus, and keep looking at the forces shaping our world.